Alright, well, here we are again. Going to do a little exploratory surgery on this carburetor here. It's a one-barrel carburetor. We're going to rebuild it today. Got this package of parts over here. Comes in a box like so. In it you will find a whole variety of bits and pieces and whatnot that we're going to have to change out. We'll be going through this later on, but you'll see in there you will find, for instance, there's your needle and seat. I don't know, a variety of other pieces and parts and goodies and whatnot. There's gaskets in here. There's an exploded parts diagram here. As we go through it, we'll look at it a little more closely. I didn't notice if this one had a new float. I don't think it does. So, put that off to the side for now. And then we'll tear into Betsy here. So, the way to do it on these guys, and this is pretty much universal when we start looking at carburetors. I'm going to pause you for just a minute. I'm going to put my gloves on. I don't want to smell like gas all day. And we're back. So, as I was saying, I'm going to take this carburetor apart. And typically when you come into these guys, there's always going to be the linkages on the side here. Okay? So this is going to be hooked to your gas pedal. It's going to be hooked over here, right there. So when this goes down like so, you mash the gas. This is going to turn thusly. And remember, that is what opens underneath our throttle blade down there. Okay? Now, to get this all apart, there's some pieces and parts that are going to have to come off at certain times, and I'll kind of walk you through this as we get there. Now, initially, obviously there's these top bolts up here. By the way, you'll notice I put down some paper here on the desktop. I like to do that. I don't like having just like wood or anything else on the table if I can help it. I like to have it as clean as I can and as obviously contrasted as I can. It's really easy to lose the screws and bits and pieces in here, so I like to lay it out on a piece of paper. As we go along, you're going to see this one I don't think is that bad dirty-wise. It's probably a little dirty inside. Put new gaskets, clean the jet. We'll new accelerator pump in it. Going to talk about that as we go as well. And what you'll see is that it probably won't take a lot to make this guy run. It was awfully clean. It would idle, but it wouldn't do much more than idle. So it had some issues obviously inside. Just be aware of that. Again, some carburetors, like what was that one I did a while? Oh, that one on that boat was a mess. That thing was terrible. It was awful. And that thing, I mean, it was down for the count basically. It would not run. It was just, no, it was awful. And so it needed a lot of work. This one could kind of make it idle, sort of, but not really. And then it would kind of die out on me. Probably could have gotten by in a pinch with just taking it apart and cleaning it. The kit isn't that much, and I'm going to start using some more of these test stand motors for other things. In the past, I don't really sure what they were used for. I'm going to start using them for some of my other classes in a couple of different ways. So I want them to be available for those purposes. Now, what you'll notice here on the back, there's a little keeper right here. This little keeper guy right here, we're going to take that piece out, and I think we're going to take that out in a minute. Before we do that, we're going to take this little keeper guy off right here, this little snap ring of a thing. Now, it's not a true snap ring, it's what's called an E-clip. I will show you momentarily why it's called an E-clip. Come on. Mr. Groom, is that because it's shaped kind of like an E? Yeah, it kind of is shaped a little like an E. Maybe you can see it now. Oh, yeah, kind of like an E. That's right, yeah. So, what that does, that held on part of the linkage on this side over here. So this can pop off like so, now, whoop, and that will allow this whole top to come up and off. Now, as it comes up and off with us, remember that inside there's a whole bunch of pieces and parts that just cannot get all grabby and bendy with. You have to be very delicate taking this apart. If you bend those pieces and parts that are inside, you will end up in a world of hurt, friend. A world of hurt. So we're not going to do that. We're going to be very gentle. Gentle. Don't screw it up. Okay? Now, let's see if I can make this happen without screwing this piece up. Oops, I know what, I shouldn't have taken that out yet. I'll save that for later. Let me put that back in before I forget. Now, I'll show you the way to do it. I see what happened. Now, this carburetor was used a lot back in the day on smaller engines back in the 60s and 70s, and others like it. Okay, so down here, if I turn this a little bit, like so, that little rod will pop out of there, and now it can come off. So I just lift it straight up and off, and this piece here is what is referred to as the air horn. Okay, now that little guy right there, let's see if we can focus you in on that. Mr. Groom, that looks broken. That's because it is, friend. This little guy right here is the accelerator pump. When I mash down on the gas, okay, when I mash down the gas pedal, remember what happens. Well, what happens is the throttle plate goes whom, and I get a ton of air. Well, on car engines, when that happens, we have this little guy here, and this little guy here does this. It goes, pushes down in like this, and what it does is it forces down this little cup, which is supposed to be a nice tight fit, into this little well right in here. Little well right there where my finger is. It's full of gas. And when I mash down, it forces that down into there, and it squirts fuel out. Squirts fuel out through what's called the, it is the accelerator pump. It squirts fuel out, and it squirts it into the stream of air that's coming in. Now, it's not on that part in there, so it must be in here where it comes out. In here somewhere, it comes out in there. When we get together, we'll take a look at it, and we'll actually show you that. Oh, see, it's spraying out right in there. So the reason this one wasn't working is because this is no longer making a tight seal with that hole. Okay, so when you push down, basically nothing happened. Okay, now, some of these other pieces and parts we'll kind of go through, talking about how they all work and stuff when we get there a little bit more. Okay, one thing at a time. We'll set him off to the side for now. As promised, down in the bottom, there's your float. Whee! There's my float. Nice. Over here, on the side here, as the float comes up, it forces the needle and seat in, or the needle into the seat right in here. This is where the flow comes in from the gas pump. Well, from the gas pump, but from the tank. It flows in and fills this bowl up into here, and there you go. There's some other pieces and parts we'll talk more about once we get it tore up and cleaned up a little bit. Here's part of your accelerator pump. Here's a hint. If anything falls out of your carburetor when you tip it over, that's not optimal, friends. Okay? So just be aware of that. If I do this and any crap falls out, that should not have happened. Okay. Oh, there it is. I can see it now. Right down in there. That little nubbin on the bottom of, right in there. Right in there. That should be where the accelerator pump squirts in from, right there. Okay? Again, we'll see that more. We'll see that more when we get it all back together. You'll be able to watch that happen live on camera. Okay? All right. So to get the float out, you take this little piece out here, set it off to the side, and the float should just lift up. Lift up and out of there, and there it is. Okay, it's a two-sided float. We'll set her back over there. Nicely done. Awesome. Okay. Now, okay, so this is a slightly different model of so this is still a valve, and it's still basically a needle and seat valve. It just looks a little different than the ones that we looked at the other day in class. I'll take it apart and show it to you in a minute. Okay, again. Oh, now this little guy right here, this little piece here. Oops, I dropped it again. Actually sits down inside that little hole right there on the bottom. Not that one. The one that's. Let me show you. That hole. Come on. That hole down there in front of my flashlight. That's where that little guy sits. Now, right there at the end of my flashlight. I don't know. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Worse than a kid. Alright, right there you can see the jet. Is that little copper looking piece, that little brass looking piece right there. We'll get him out in a few minutes. And this little valve, that's another little valve over here on this side. We'll talk more about him when we get around to getting him out. Okay? Alright. Enough said on that. Let's continue to tear this down. I will pause you. We'll get back to this in a few minutes. Okay, so here we have that jet. I pulled it out. As you can see, well, you can see right through it, Mr. Groom. It's pretty clean. It is pretty clean. Okay, what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to go ahead and shoot cleaner through it. Don't go anywhere. So I'm going to take this can of cleaner here, and I'm going to put the straw on it. And not through the jet per se, I'm going to put it through the hole where the jet lives. Okay, so the hole where the jet lives is down inside of there. I'm going to go ahead and shoot down through it. Ooh, it got me. Mr. Groom, you got me. Okay, it's going to be coming up, back up through this nozzle up into here. Okay, that's where it's coming up through. So go ahead and shoot down through that. It's going to clean everything out. Now, yuck, gross. All right, now, we're going to put this jet back in a few minutes. I'm going to set him off to the side. This particular carburetor, there's not too much dirt in there to finish cleaning out of that bottom. If there was, I'd kind of go nuts a little bit more with it, but I'm not going to in this case. I am going to do a little more shooting. Okay, just to clean it up. I'm going to go down through that accelerator pump hole. Oops. Shoot, you can actually see it pop out there, can't you? Nice. So what I did was I shot down through one hole, and it flashed back up through another. And that's kind of the whole point. Is what we're doing here is we're looking at, can we blast those cavities out as we're cleaning? We mentioned the other day in class about the Briggs & Stratton carburetors that frequently get plugged up. And so all you really need to do on those is clean out the jet. Very similar process. I would suggest parts cleaner, brake clean's okay. Brake clean, part clean, whatever, something like that. If you are in a pinch and all you have is, for instance, WD-40, that's hunky-dory too. Really not the end of the world anyway. All you're doing is using some compressed fluids to blow through it. If you have compressed air, that also works. Any of those things are fine. Again, I like this parts cleaner. I kind of like it. It's just nice and clean. Helps me clean stuff out too in case there's a little bit of dirt and grime. It's nice. That won't happen with air, but it is better than nothing. I had to clean it out. Just clean out the bowl a little bit better. That's better than it was for sure. A little bit more on this side maybe. Okay. Now, I saw on YouTube this guy was using an ultrasonic cleaner for his carburetors where he had a big bowl full of stuff. Yes indeed. Well, if Mr. Groom, if this was 1984 or something, and if I was into carburetors all the time, and if, there's a bunch of ifs that would go along with that, then yeah, I'd probably have a carb cleaner. I'd probably have some carb cleaner bowls laying around. Okay, I would probably have a way to do a bunch of that. That's true. Probably would. But it's not something we do a ton of in the shops working on carburetors. We don't do a ton of it. And so as a result, I'm not going to go spend a bunch of money to find an ultrasonic cleaner for this guy and do all this extra work. All right. If that was my job, if all I did was work on old carburetors and stuff, then I for sure would. Now note that on the bottom of this old gasket's left on here. I'll be right back. We're going to scrape that off. Okay, so this gasket scraper just comes along and lifts that stuff up. Very much like you're, scraping the bowl for the chocolate pudding or something there. Very similar. Just scrape it off nice and clean. If you don't clean it off thoroughly, what will happen is when I go to put the new gasket on, there will be high spots and air will get in. And you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. It is a big deal. Every bit of air that gets into my engine has to come through the top of the carburetor. Because as that air comes in, it will draw with it the appropriate amount of gasoline. Okay? And if we don't do that, what will end up happening every single time, and I cannot stress this enough, every single time, what will happen is that your engine will end up running what we say lean. That is, it's not getting enough gasoline. Okay? It'll be getting too much air, not enough gasoline. We call that lean mixture. We'll talk more about that in class one of these days. We mentioned it, but we're going to talk a lot more about it. Okay? Now, we can't have that. That's what's called a vacuum leak. It's a fairly common problem that you will see around. I mean, vacuum leaks are fairly a common occurrence. And when that happens, it's because you're getting air in that's not passing through the carburetor, and as a result, you are not metering the right amount of air through into the jet stream. Now, we're going to go ahead and pull out the idle screw right here, the idle mixture screw. Let me zoom in on that. There it is. Where are you? Well, this fella right here. Okay, now, these guys, you always want to make sure on every carburetor you ever do this on, you count how many turns it is. Now, how do I do that? Well, you turn it clockwise, slowly and gently, until you count how many turns it is. Pro tip, try to do it every half turn. So there's 1/2. That's 1 full turn. 1.5. 2 turns. About 2 1/4 turns. Now, typically, we'll write that down somewhere. We'll go ahead and pull that out. Okay. Typically, it's fairly common for most carburetors. You start it right around 2 turns. If you don't know where to start, if you start right around 2 turns out, it will typically start for you. And then you can adjust it from there. What you're doing when you're doing that is you're adjusting the amount of fuel that it's getting while it's idling compared to air. You're adjusting the richness of the mixture when it's idling. Okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and take this bottom plate off. Okay, this is called the throttle body piece because it's got the throttle plate in it. There's 3 screws on it, and I'm going to change. There's a gasket underneath. I'm just going to go ahead and change that while I'm here. It's in the kit. I'm going to go ahead and change it because we're already here, and let's go ahead and do it. It seems like it would be silly not to. Okay. Notice also, I noticed that just by doing that, these Phillips screws, a couple of them are a little loose. That's not good. If you had loose screws, you could end up, if you have loose screws, if you have loose screws, that can end up with another vacuum leak, like we talked about before, where air could come in on the bottom of the carburetor and not be getting measured appropriately, which is not optimal. Okay? What is your freaking problem? Oh, there she comes. Again, there it is. Now, this bottom piece here, you can see this is a gasket. And let me see if I can see it so we can get it a little better here. I'll see if I can pry it off of there for you and show it to you. Okay? Take my gasket scraper. Come in here like thus. See if you can try not to stab yourself in the hand. That would be optimal. I think I'm going to try it with my knife. See if I can get under it with my knife a little easier maybe. Okay? Going to try to get it off. Mr. Groom, did you know it was leaking? No, I don't know it was leaking, but this kit comes with one, and it's literally a 5-minute procedure to finish taking it down to here and changing that and putting a new one on it because we're already here. Don't be lazy. Okay? Now, here's a razor blade. Maybe that can get it lifted up. I'd like to get it off in one piece so that I can show you what the new one should look like, and we'll find the new one in the parts box over here momentarily. Okay? Sorry, all I'm doing is sliding. It's not very exciting right here. I would like to have it on camera always, but this is a low-budget operation. I don't have someone following me around filming me all day. And besides that, if they did, you wouldn't want to see me working in a shop necessarily. It's not a pretty sight. It's like making sausage, they say. Sometimes you're just kind of like, oh, Mr. Groom's not happy. No, he's not. You picked up on that, did you? Mm-hmm. How could you tell? He doesn't sound very happy right now. No, he's not. He's kind of upset. A little fired up, friend. Oh, there you go. Anyway, here's your gasket. You can see the shape. It's more or less in one piece. I'm going to go ahead and finish cleaning the rest of it off of this piece here so we can get it all back together momentarily. This is probably the first piece that we will put back together. Is we'll put that gasket in and put the screws back in it, put it back on, and start building back up from there. Okay, we'll also take a look at the top of the carburetor, which is referred to as the air horn. We'll get into that piece here in a few minutes too. It's probably the last piece that we'll tackle. Really nothing in that piece that has to be done before the bottom. So do the bottom and the middle first, and then you go ahead and put your air horn back on when you're finished, and finish cleaning the pieces up in there. Okay? Now, over here, I happen to have a gasket that looks identical. Oops, it looks identical to this one, except, not broken. So I'm going to go ahead and put it on, like so. Nice, that's hot. Oh, yeah. There you go. All right, then this fella's going to go on just like that. And I have to hold this a minute. Hang on. Darn it. So, pro tip, if the gasket has to be on this bottom portion, because obviously the screws have to come in from the bottom, what you can do is stick the screw up through there, like so, and it'll kind of help hold it there. Okay? We could also use some gasket tacky stuff too, which I may or may not hold. Alright, bottom's back together. Just had to kind of hold my mouth just right on that piece. No, nothing really else to see there. Not a big deal. I'll go ahead and put the jet in now. Now, I will tell you straight up right now, this is one of the harder things to do, and somehow or another, I dropped it, and it went in, sit right in the hole, which I should probably go buy a lottery ticket, because that never happens, okay? Getting them in there, and then trying to get them lined up down in that bowl where you can't get your finger in there, is a ginormous pain in the buttocks, usually. But, I guess I must be living right today. Well, I open my big mouth. It looks like it's sitting in there, but it's not starting straight. So, this will be fun. Get in there, you hippie. Come on. Shimona. Come on. Goodness sakes alive. Alright, don't run back, and it allows more or less fuel in as it's doing that. Okay? Like so. Now, okay, you'll notice that this guy has a spring on it. Like so, this spring. Like so. You see that? Now, this spring works off of this piston right here. So, what happens is this. When there's a lot of air coming into the engine, when there's not much air coming in, it's rather at idle, what's going to be happening is the situation where this has been lifted up, okay, and that closes off extra fuel to that through that little valve down there. When you mash on the gas, there's going to be less pressure, and it's going to drop down because of a spring in here. That's going to force that valve open down below, and it's going to let more air into the stream, and you're going to be able to run, obviously at a higher RPM. It's called a power valve. All right, I'm about out of battery. I'm going to pick this up tomorrow. Hey, we're back. My battery died the other day, like a month ago it seems like now. Now I'm going to finish the video. There it is. Cool. I think where we left off last time, we'd gotten the power valve back in. We'd cleaned through the jets. We had the jet out. We cleaned it, blew through everything. Pretty well good to go. Now we're going to change the needle and seat combo. Now, needle and seat combination, there's a couple of different ones for this model. And we'll decide in a minute when we get it out which one is the one that fits us in this regard. They both look a little bit different, so we're going to go ahead and pull this fella out, and then once we get it out, we'll take a look and see which one it happens to be. Looks like 5/8. Am I right? Am I right? By God, I'm right. How about that? There's a first time for everything. She said goodbye. Good song. There's not much of anything I haven't tried. Alright, so again, here is the needle and seat combo. So you're looking for one that matches it. It's going to be this guy here. Okay, it's slightly different ending on it, but it's the same principle. Why would they send a couple of them? Same exact carburetor, slightly different internals. You know, not a big deal. Perhaps the one for the Chevy used a certain kind, the one for the Ford are different or whatever. It's neither here nor there. They probably would both work. Just kind of a different way of setting it up. My guess is probably has to do a little bit more with our float setup than anything else, because as you know, the float is what obviously runs the needle and the seat. Make sure we're still recording there. That'd be my next trick. Stand here and talk to the microphone for 5 hours and it's off. Wasn't that fun, Mr. Groom? Not really, no. Okay, so this is a little tighter than normally you would for whatever reason. Brass fittings are supposed to have a little bit of tension on them so they help seal better, but that one seems like it's a little tighter than I would have wanted it to be, I guess, is the word I would have gone with. Alright, cool. So, again, here's our old power valve. I'm going to set this old parts off out of the road so I don't actually go, oh, did I forget something? Because that'd just be annoying as heck. So we're down at the bottom of the carburetor, okay, but to put the float back in, okay. Recall the float just sits in here like thus. Well, maybe. Get over there, dummy. So this little piece got to fit through both of them like so. Get in there. I know what I'm doing. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. Here. That's another show from the late 80s. It's called Sledgehammer. Cool show. Alright, there it is. And it just sits in there like thus. Nice. And so as the float comes up, to float, it comes over and it pushes on our... I did it upside down. It helps you get it in the right way, Mr. Grom. So it comes up, it floats up like this, and it pushes in. Let's zoom in on that a little bit there, dummy. I'll hold it up so you can see it more betterish. Nice. So you can see there, the shiny part in there, that is the part of our needle. So as it comes up, it just pushes that baby right in. Schlicker and schnot. Okay? So we'll do an adjustment in a little bit on the float, because it needs to be set at the appropriate level. If it's sat too low, we'd have an issue, and vice versa. Now, okay, a couple things to think about. Right here, you can see this guy, this piece right here. These guys, just spring loaded like that. Okay. What happens is this. So when you mash on the gas, when you mash on the gas, okay, the spring, this is normally sucked down here like this. When you mash on the gas, all of a sudden it's held down here by vacuum. So when you mash on the gas, there's less vacuum, and this pops up like this. And this guy here is what's called the power piston. And what he does is he comes down and he mashes on this little piece in here, that little piece right there. Focus. This little piece that's sticking up out of that little guy right there, and it pushes it down, and that allows more fuel to come in. It's the power valve, and we need it when we go full throttle, when we mash on the gas. Okay, so when we're mashing on the gas, that's when that needs to happen. Okay, now, I just realized there's one more thing that I forgot. And that's what happens when you've been away from this for a few days, month, week, whatever. And that is the idea that we need to take care of the... I didn't put it in yet, but I don't see it over here either. Uh-oh. I want to pause you for a second. We are missing... Found it. Alright, so, again, down here in this well, that's where the accelerator pump goes into. In here, we need to put this little check ball in. It's a little BB of a thing. And there's a little weight that goes on top of that. That's our check ball system in there. Okay. When you go full throttle, when you mash the gas, you're going to get a squirt of gas that's going to come out. It's going to force that ball up and squirt fuel in. That's great. However, when you're not doing that, you don't want that to be on, so you put the check ball set up in there, like so. Okay, next thing I want to take a look at is the accelerator pump here, and I'm going to take this gasket off. I'm just going to peel it off like so. Get out of there. Now, this little piece here can kind of wobble out of the way. Usually, you can get it out, slide it over, slide it off. Okay. We've got a new gasket. We'll set that off to the side for right now. Now, the last thing that really needs to be changed in this upper part, and really the only thing in this upper part, is this accelerator pump. So, what you can do, you got to get it off of this shaft here, and I'll show you how in a second when I remember the pieces of it. So, okay, I'm going to take this screw out right here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that screw. The nice thing about carburetors is they're pretty straightforward. Once you understand how one of them works, they're all similar-ish. And again, I always say that. Hey, it's very similar to... Yeah, it is. That's because they are. There's very little difference between this, that, and the other thing. So you see how I push it out. Zoom in. So I push it out, and then what's going to happen is this spring, you simply pull it off, if I can, like so. I pulled it back, and then this just rolls around and slides off like that. Okay, so I'm going to set that back down, pull this baby off, and then, now the only part that came that's new with this is some kits will have this whole new piece, this whole piece. But the only piece that we really need is this suction cup out here on the end. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and pry it off of there. Ah! I'm going to grab another screwdriver real quick. Get off in there, you hippie. Okay, so I slipped it off. I ended up using a pair of needle nose. And we're just going to come over and we're going to find in this package, we're going to find the replacement. And now I see that I had a replacement check ball. The BB really can't get hurt, so I'm just going to go ahead and reuse the previous check ball. But in general, they usually send one of those in there. The other piece is just a weight that holds it down, and the weight really can't go bad. Now, there are two caps in there. This is the design of the first one I had. And what it should do, if you're unsure if it's right or not, it should just fit into that well right there. You can see it sitting in there. It's upside down, but that's the idea of it. So, fiddle faddle. When you get the check ball in, don't turn it upside down, you doofus. All right, so the check ball fell out. Or did it? No, the check ball is still in there. So I'll put the weight back in and set it off to the side and see if we can not screw it up this time. So I'm simply going to take this and shove it over the top of it gently. There it is. So it's sitting on there now like so. Cool. Awesome. Now, couldn't you have just done that in the carburetor? I could have if I'd been paying attention that was what had happened. But I wasn't paying attention that was what had happened. So, I didn't. So, sue me, I guess. You know what I'm saying? I feel like. Now, this piece goes back on thusly. I was thinking today, if I had like a TV film crew following me around, this would sure make this job a heck of a lot easier. But, whatever. It's fine. I don't care. I'll do my own vidya. And tighten that screw down like thus. Okay. And again, when you mash on the carburetor, whom, right? Like this. Whom, whum, 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 whum. Okay, the action of this thing going down, up and down that carburetor well is what forces the fluid into gives you a spray of fluid into the carburetor when you go full throttle. Okay, that's the big thing we had to do on this upper end. This choke linkage fell off over here, so that's cool. It was just sitting like this. When we get back on the car, it'll be easier to figure it out. Okay, it's pretty straightforward though. You'll see how it all hooks back together in a minute. Yeah, I think I'll leave that on there for now. Now, we do need to get the gasket set back on here. That's always fun. You try to, Mr. Groove, it won't run. Well, that's because you didn't put the carburetor back on, you goofus. All right, so Make sure that you got the correct one. All the holes should line up. All right. Notice that the holes in the bottom are the ones that matter. So there's like 3 holes here. They line up with the 3 holes there. Sweet. These 2 holes here, they line up. Sweet. What about this extra hole? It's not a big deal, man. Don't worry about it, bro. What about that one there? It doesn't have one. That's cool too, bro. Don't worry about it. Okay. This piece here, this hole right here. Okay, well, guess what? There's no hole in this one, so it's not a huge deal. It's not going to be the end of the world. Now, that looks like the right one to me. This one here might be a little bit different. Let's see if we like this one better. Oh, friends, this one's perfect. So, again, slightly different. Make sure you get the appropriate one to fit your needs in your carburetor. Now, Mr. Groom, would it have been helpful if you had paid attention when you took it apart, Mr. Groom, to which way it goes on? It probably would have been helpful. Is it going to be the end of the world now? Not really, no. So if you look over here, well, just move the carburetor, dummy. If you look over here, I have it laid on properly for the bottom. You see it's on there. Sweet. This is the accelerator pump side. That means it's going to go on like so. Which means that if I flip this over, it's going to go on here like so. And that's how I know I've got it, lined up right. That's how I like to think about it like that. Just move them around. So it's usually easier. There's usually one place that's easier to make sure everything's lined up. And whether that's on the bottom of the carburetor or the top. In this case, it was easier on the bottom versus up here on the air horn. But that'll change from carburetor to carburetor. Sometimes it's easier to do it one way. Sometimes it's easier to do it the other way. In either case, you're good to go. Now, I noticed that there is one deal that I missed, and that's right here. This piece here is what holds the float in, so that's kind of handy. That's something that we got to pay attention to. And yeah, I think we're good there. I think the only thing that's left to do to finish putting this guy back together is the float measurements. So I'm going to pause you for a minute, and then we'll do those float measurements. So in this particular carburetor, okay, to check the float adjustment, what we're going to do. Now, different carburetors have sometimes 2 different adjustments for the floats. But the big deal is you want to make sure the float is adjusted to the right level. So to do that, in this case, we're going to hold this retaining clip here, and we're going to put our finger over that little ball and check valve. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it upside down. Now you're like, I can't see anything. I know, but check it out, bro. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this straight edge, and I'm going to put it right on the bottom here. And what I'm looking for is to see if those floats, the float comes down and touches it, and it doesn't quite. Okay? So if you look, I'll kind of tip you so you can see. I'll try to zoom you out in, try to change the focus a little bit. Hopefully we can do that. Alright, so if you kind of look in there, you can kind of see the edge of the float. I'm going to reset you up in the air. Hang on, don't go anywhere. Tip you up. There we go. Cool. Alright, bro. Bruh. So as one can see, maybe, well, if I can find where the darn floats are. Up in here, or where my floats are, you can see them right there. Right there. And what should be happening, in theory, is when I put this straight edge across here, the float should just touch it. Now, as far as I can see, they're not quite down far enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the tab where it contacts the needle. I'm going to bend it just a bit. And what that's going to do, it's going to drop my float a little bit. When it drops my float, that's going to let more fuel in the carburetor. Okay? And what's that going to do for us? Well, it's going to have more fuel on standby in the bowl ready to go. That's what's going to do for me. Okay? So I'm going to try this again. I'm going to roll it over. And as you can see, Mr. Groom, you got a little carried away, you dumb weirdo. Because now the floats are sticking all the way out of the... Oh, that's ridiculous, you loser. So you went too far. So, this is somewhat of a trial and error process. Alright, there's no carburetors, especially these old ones. There was a lot of adjustments. You adjusted it by bending it. Like, what? Yes. And The first time I ever did one like that, it kind of freaked me out. I'm like, what do you mean I just bend it? Oh yeah, just bend it, man. It's cool. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, oh, that feels weird, man. For instance, I'll show you an adjustment here in a minute. And we'll probably make the adjustment when we get on this engine over here later on. But suffice to say, when you go to hit the gas pedal, there should be a good spray of gas that comes in. Well, this linkage right here, you see that curve right there? Nice, that's hot. That curve is put there so that you can adjust how long that linkage is. You make the curve tighter, it makes the linkage shorter. It changes how much fuel you squirt in when you hit the gas pedal, just by bending it. Yeah, it's kind of weird. And so now, it's kind of hard to see, but I think I've got it pretty much right now. The floats are right at the top of the thing, which is what the correct adjustment is. Again, different carburetors do it differently. That's the only adjustment for this one. Now, there's one I did last year. There's one I did last year where you had to do you adjusted it this way and then turned over. You adjusted it both ways, and you made adjustments both directions on it. Okay? I think, fellas, friends, neighbors, I think we are pretty much ready to put her together. So let's go ahead. And again, pay attention to how the thing fits on. It goes on like so. You got to make sure everything lines up. We got this guy in the hole there. Down we go. Mr. Groom, your head's in the way. If I could move my head, friend, I would move my head. I promise you. Promise you I'd move my head. Okay? I feel like my accelerator pump doesn't want to go in the hole. Get in there, you hippie. Get in the hole. Okay, well, we're going to pause for just a minute while I fight with my accelerator pump and see if I can get her in the hole. Alright, I think I got her now. Just a matter of putting in the screws, I think, and then we'll test it and see what's what in a few minutes. Hopefully we got her. How will you know, Mr. Groom? Well, we can fill the float bowl, and you could do that and then see if it squirts properly, and that's one way to go. I would prefer to just do that on the vehicle. I'm pretty sure I got it right, and if I do, cool, it'll squirt some fuel into the car, and I can do that. Or in theory, I could just do it right here on the bench. You just sit it right here on the bench and put some fuel in the bowl, and then see where that goes, and that's totally doable as well. But we'll play it by ear in a second. I don't know. We'll see what Mr. Groom feels. I just don't feel, huh? Okay, now, it's important. This thing is made out of aluminum, as you know. And as a result, the guy could get kind of crazy and bend things. You want these tight enough that they don't leak, obviously. But they don't need to be like ridiculously tight either. That's why they use screws on them. Okay? The guy can't really tighten a screw that tight by hand. Okay? Yeah, it's tight enough. Don't get carried away. It's not a situation where we need to break out a torque wrench and go nuts. Get a breaker bar, Mr. Groom. Let's go tighter. No. Remember, make sure that all of your bolts are started or screws are started before you start tightening the rest of them down. Sometimes there can be just enough of a bind where the bolt won't start and you'll be all mad. I had missed one on the back side, so I was going, what you should do when you're doing these is kind of jump from side to side, kind of a crisscross fashion, make sure you get them all tight. That helps you to kind of distribute the load, the clamping load. See, that one there loosened up on me. And then I can make sure that I've got a good, tight fit. I think I got them all again. Let's just make sure. Yes. We good. All right, friends. Now, okay, accelerator pump feels good. So this is the tricky part, is getting that linkage back on. A couple ways I could have done it. I probably could have tried to swoop it on when I was putting it on. but I didn't think to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is take this little nut off right here. I'm going to slide this bit out, and I think I can get it back on fairly straightforwardly. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to pause you so you don't have to hear me, going after myself. All right, fine, I'll show you. Okay, I'm simply going to take this nut off here. Now there's a spring on this guy, so you have to be a little careful when you pull this part out that it doesn't come across and rip your hand off or whatever. So just be careful. So let's see, why does that not want to pull out? It doesn't want to pull out. Perhaps, maybe, perhaps I can slide it in. All right, I am going to turn you off because I'm going to get mad at myself here in about a minute. All right, here we go. So, last little thing we need to do is get this piece up on here. It pushes on a little further. So you're just going to push him on here more. Come on, get on there, you hippie. And then get that nut and washer back on it. Okay? So once we get that tightened back up, everything's hunky-dory on here. Make sure I get started straight, dummy. Remember, cross threads are better than Loctite. So you can screw things up pretty good if you're not paying attention. We don't like that. We don't like to cross thread our threads. It messes them up. And then, hey, Mr. Groom, this isn't proper. We got problems here. Yeah, how about that? Okay. Everything looks pretty hunky-dory. Okay, so again, we go full throttle. Whom, whom, whom. This piece here works our accelerator pump. Looks pretty good on that end of things. Okay, now, get the choke piece back on here in a minute. I'll get that back on. The only thing left to do is our idle mixture jet, which is right down here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom you in on it. Right here. So we're going to screw it in. Now remember, the deal is on these guys, you're going to go ahead and screw it all the way down. Gently, for goodness sakes. Right there, it's bottomed out. Now pay attention. See how it's slotted this away? I'm going to go out to about 2 turns for my initial setup. So that's a half a turn, 1, 1.5, 2 turns. Right there, this carburetor should start and run okay on the vehicle. And then, of course, we may have to make some adjustments as time goes on. And that is, friends, the carburetor rebuild. Now, this piece here, and this piece here have to go back on. Again, it's part of our choke linkage. Get that back on. It's not a big deal. Do it off camera. Not a big deal at all. Again, everything else is put back on where it belongs. We should be good to go. Okay. And I guess therein lies the lesson, friends. Anyway, good working with you. Of course, we'll put a new one of these guys on the top. We should have a new one in the package. Actually, we don't have a new one on the top package. We do have a new bottom gasket. That's going to be a big deal. We will make sure that's a nice, tight, secure fit. We do not want to have what we call vacuum leaks under the carburetor. If we're getting extra air in, it's not going to have enough fuel. We're going to have an issue. All right, done.